Congratulate Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu. We worked as a team like perhaps no team has ever worked before, and we've gone a long way to erasing this horrible threat to Israel.
Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth says President Trump did what previous presidents couldn't or wouldn't do.
The order we received from our commander-in-chief was focused, it was powerful, and it was clear. We devastated the Iranian nuclear program. But it's worth noting the operation did not target Iranian troops or the Iranian people. Thanks to President Trump's bold and visionary leadership and his commitment to peace through strength, Iran's nuclear ambitions have been obliterated. Many presidents have dreamed of delivering the final blow to Iran's nuclear program, and none could until President Trump. The operation President Trump planned was bold and it was brilliant, showing the world that American deterrence is back.
Democrats in Washington are again talking impeachment. Politicians and pundits are expressing outrage over President Trump's attacking Iraq without a prior authorization of Congress. But attorney Alex Sawyer, who writes for the Washington Times, says Democrats are dead wrong again.
They do not have a leg to stand on. First, Article 2 of the Constitution gives the president broad powers as commander-in-chief of the military. Second, there has been legal opinions out of the Justice Department talking just about that the president has broad authority to act in quickly and swiftly in matters of national security. And that's just what we saw from President Trump. When it comes to the law, the question is whether the president has the possibility to come to Congress before acting. Well, here I would argue that in this strike, it was top secret. The president was working with Israel, and going to Congress could have risked the success of the mission and also put military lives at risk.
Iran is said to be considering closing the critical Straits of Hormuz, through which 20% of the world oil passes. But Taylor Riggs of the Big Money Show on Fox says this wouldn't have much of an impact.
Because A, we are much more independent from Iran and all of the global oil supply than we were, let's talk about back in the 1990s, which we could go into when Iraq invaded Kuwait, and then we had to get involved, and then that was a whole other issue with oil. So the good news is we've totally diversified since then. The other good news is Trump went to Saudi Arabia in the Middle East just last month, right? And shored up all of our support there. Saudi Arabia, if they close the Strait of Hormuz, Saudi Arabia has channels through the Red Sea where they could still export oil. And again, it's only 20%.
And finally, keep an eye on a Colorado case going before the U.S. Supreme Court in the next term. Chris Woodward has more.
Professional counselor Kaylee Chowles filed a lawsuit in 2019 challenging Colorado's Mental Health Practice Act, a law that prohibits licensed mental health professionals from offering professional counseling if the therapist expresses views on sexual orientation or gender identity that the state disapproves of. Childs and her attorneys at Alliance Defending Freedom argue this law infringes on therapist First Amendment rights. Liberty Justice Center attorney Riley Stevens agrees.
We think that is a First Amendment problem. Essentially, the government is deciding which viewpoints are appropriate and which are not.
I'm Chris Woodward.
For American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh.
Are you a new small group leader looking for a strong curriculum? Even if you've been a leader for years, there's always a need for tools to help you as you help others deepen their love for God and their Bible knowledge. AFA Stream is a great resource. With topics covering biblical worldview training, godly marriage, and more, you'll have access to some of the best teaching available. And if you're a Great Commission partner, you open up even more. Visit stream.afa.net today. stream.afa.net.
Welcome to Today's Issues, offering a Christian response to the issues of the day. Here's your host, Tim Wildman, President of the American Family Association.
Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Today's Issues on the American Family Radio Network. Thanks for listening to AFR on this Monday, June the 23rd, 2025. And I want to welcome Ed Vitagliano. Good morning, Ed.
Good morning, Tim.
I guess welcome me back, right?
Yes, welcome back.
And Chris Woodward. Good morning, Chris.
Good morning. You were in the nation's capital last week.
Yes, we, by we, I mean Allison and yours truly, and that's my wife, and then Stephen and Beth McDowell, the Providence Foundation, and we hosted some of our fine listeners and supporters. We went to Colonial Williamsburg, Jamestown, and Yorktown, and then we went to Washington, D.C. and Mount Vernon and saw the nation's capital. It was a great week, as we do this twice a year. We do it in June and September, and it was a wonderful time spent with some great folks who pray for us and believe in us and write us checks, and I thanked them, and we had a wonderful time. We absolutely did. Now, while we were there, of course, big news broke, right?
Yeah, absolutely. The U.S. military, under orders from President Trump, bombed 3 different nuclear sites in Iran, and that's primarily, we will talk about a few other things, but that has been the big news all weekend long. The president, I will say this. I don't always agree with everything President Trump does. I don't even agree with everything my wife does. Okay.
Right, but you don't say that out loud. That was a mistake. What you just did right there. But anyway, go ahead.
Yes, that's right. Because I said it. I can't deny it now, can I? But I'm just going to tell you, President Trump continues to surprise, even shock me with his boldness. Thinking outside the box. He basically told the world he's giving Iran 2 weeks to come to the negotiating table. And 2 or 3 days after he said that, lit the match.
After that time was expired.
No, yeah, but before the time was expired.
Oh, yes.
He said 2 weeks. They got to, and so just to make sure nobody was looking, he says 2 weeks, we'll give it, and then 2 or 3 days later, he gives the thumbs up, and the military performed just an amazing feat. By the way, we are going to have Frank Turek on in just a few minutes, who I think you said is a Navy aviator, to talk a little bit about the actual talk about the mission. But wow, a lot going on, a lot could still happen and probably will happen. But anyway, Chris.
Well, just to clarify, what I meant by that was that President Trump and his team had been in negotiations with the Iranian regime for several weeks.
That is also true, yes.
Prior to the 2-week ultimatum.
Yes. Yeah.
Anyway, go ahead, Chris.
Well, I mean, just to kind of take everybody back to Saturday night, when much of the United States of America found out after supper what had happened in Iran when we got news alerts or whatnot on our phone. And a lot of us were directed to a presidential address that was going to begin at 10 p.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. Central. And I have some of that audio here. Let's just begin with Trump at the beginning of the remarks, which also included behind President Trump at the podium was Vice President J.D. Vance, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. But here is President Trump at the beginning of Saturday night's remarks, clip 1.
A short time ago, the U.S. military carried out massive precision strikes on the 3 key nuclear facilities in the Iranian regime: Fordow, Natanz, and Esfahan. Everybody heard those names for years as they built this horribly destructive enterprise. Our objective was the destruction of Iran's nuclear enrichment capacity and a stop to the nuclear threat posed by the world's #1 state sponsor of terror. Tonight, I can report to the world that the strikes were a spectacular military success. Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated. Iran, the bully of the Middle East, must now make peace. If they do not, future attacks will be far greater and a lot easier.
Now, since that speech, there have been news reports and even social media posts from Iranian officials saying, they're not going to back down. I saw a story here as the show began this morning. President Trump is meeting with his national security team again today to talk about and perhaps prepare for any sort of response from Iran. Fox, meanwhile, had a story yesterday saying that Iranian officials were going to be talking with their Russian counterparts. And then there was a story from former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev.
Medvedev.
Thank you.
Who? What now?
The former president of Russia said there are countries lining up to give Iran nuclear weapons again. So
What's
this
his
is
name?
not over. Medvedev.
How you spell that?
Medvedev, I think.
Medvedev.
There you go.
Medvedev.
I just wanted to see y'all struggle with that.
I can do it when
no,
I'm
that was
looking
just
at
a
it.
game for me. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have done that on a serious.
That was just a game.
Yeah. So this fella who we've seen in the news for many years, is he Vladimir Putin's number 2 guy?
He was the president for a period of time when Putin stepped away.
When
and
he
then,
pretended to step away,
and then Putin he returns for his big return.
So
he's like
I know who
his advisors now.
Yeah, we've all seen him and heard him over the years, but for him to say that countries are lining up to give Iran a nuclear warhead, what is he talking about? I don't think that's true. Does anybody even believe that? I think he's just ticked at America.
Well, I will say this: when Medvedev said that over the weekend, that was the scariest thing I heard all weekend, because Iran's making threats, and we're going to be talking about this. I mean, closing the Straits of Hormuz, and there's talk about perhaps sleeper cells in the United States, all those kind of things. There's a lot of dangerous things that could happen. But when Medvedev said that there were nations lining up to give nuclear warheads to Iran, that was very concerning to me. I did some reading on that afterwards. An article in Business Insider said that analysts were claiming that this is garbage, what Medvedev said, because
Russian disinformation.
It was, yes, that it was not really credible. And one of these individuals, Pavel Podvig, I can spell that because I'm looking at it. He's a senior researcher in the United Nations Institute for Disarmament. Researches weapons of mass destruction. He said it's impossible in practice because nuclear weapons are not like a bomb or just something you can carry in a suitcase. He says nuclear warheads come as an entire system with people who need to be trained to keep and service them safely, as well as maintenance facilities and equipment. He also said even tactical nukes, which are more portable and produce a smaller blast, need high-level storage. He said unless you create a nuclear program or almost a nuclear program in the country, there's no way to just give your nuclear weapons to them. So that helped me a little bit, because I was very worried that someone like North Korea or even China or Russia might hand off nuclear warheads to Iran that could be used in a variety of ways against Israel or against us. But at least from what some of these people are saying, there were others quoted in
But it sounded like almost a flippant remark from this guy who's the number 2 guy in Russia, that, he was like he was gleeful or something, like, oh, well, never mind. Don't worry.
Yeah,
don't worry.
We'll give them. We'll make sure they
we'll
get
give Iran a nuclear warhead so they can bomb America.
It would. As I thought about this over the weekend, I thought, like you said, how dangerous for the country who gives them the weapons.
If they were to do that.
If they were to do that, I don't put anything past Mossad, the intelligence branch for Israel. If that were done, to find out exactly who did it.
Sure they would.
And who had handed these over. And then if Iran uses those weapons, and the people running the country, the mullahs, they're insane. They are eaten up with this apocalyptic religious belief. They're going to use those nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
Then the country who gives them those weapons are responsible for the carnage.
Right. All right. Well, I want to take a look at the mission that took place. I've been reading a lot on this. It's fascinating, the mission that our military undertook to take out the nuclear facilities, nuclear weapon facilities there in Iran. And joining us to talk about it is our good friend Dr. Frank Turek from Cross-Examined Ministries, and I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist radio show and podcast. How you doing, Frank?
I'm just swell. How's everybody there?
All right, brother. Hey, I wanted to ask you, you've mentioned it before. What is your military experience?
Well, I was in naval aviation, but my middle son was in Air Force aviation. In fact, he was a refueler. He used to fly KC-10s. Now, they've retired the KC-10s. Now they got the KC-135, and they're trying to bring the 46 on to refuel. I don't know which refuelers were involved bringing the B-2s across, but what we used to say about my son Spencer is that every day he would fly up to 30,000 feet, he would sit around and pass gas.
Oh, man.
Wow. That's
something guys say.
Hey, if I got paid to pass gas, I'd be a multimillionaire already.
Somebody just turned on their radio. They just turned on the radio.
I don't have
and that
enough
was the
faith to
first thing
continue
they
this
heard, and there was no context at all. Frank, what can you tell us about the mission that was undertaken here? I mean, give us your thoughts on that.
Well, I think this has been planned not just during the Trump administration, but this mother of all weapons, this bunker buster bomb, we've had since Afghanistan. It was or right after Afghanistan. I think we got that weapon. We didn't use it in any military way. We used it just in training. This is the first time it's ever been used in a military strike. But they've been training for this even prior to Trump. And I think that the Pentagon has known that at some point this might have needed to have happened. And so this has been going on for quite a while. Now, refueling is nothing new. In fact, if you've got to take any of these planes across the pond, as we say it, especially the fighters, they need to be refueled along the way quite a bit. This 37-hour round trip for the B-2, they say they were refueled like 3 times each way. So,
but they left out of we had decoys here, and they left out of Missouri, right?
They did. They went Missouri, and they had 2 go west, and the rest 7 go east. And typically, when you fly, you squawk codes so air traffic controllers and such can see you and other planes and that kind of thing. They weren't squawking anything. They were totally, almost radio silent the whole way.
How high up were they? Do you know?
I don't know how high the B-2s go. Our reconnaissance planes, like a U-2, can go up to 60,000, maybe even above that. But I don't know how high the U-2 or the B-2s.
The reason I ask is, as I understand it, they were undetectable by radar.
Well, that's why. Yeah, that Batwing plane has about the radar, the radar profile of a ketchup bottle. You're not going to see it. And those next generation fighters, the F-35s, they have very low radar profile too. So they're designed so the enemy can't see you. Also, what has been done, and I don't know if it was done on this flight, I haven't read anything about it, but in the Navy we had planes that would jam enemy radar. It would create problems for enemy radar. I don't know if they did much of that on this. It didn't seem like they had any capacity after the Israelis went in there to even put up anti-aircraft fire. But of course, if you don't see anybody coming, there's no reason to put up anti-aircraft fire. So the Israelis paved the way. The United States just went in there and with precision and stealth just did the job and then got out.
The B-2, I just looked it up, has a reported maximum altitude of 50,000 feet.
Yeah, I don't know if they could do that with an additional 60,000 pounds.
Well, that may be true. By the way, when I quoted this article from Business Insider talking about about whether or not you could just hand nuclear warheads off to Iran, Brent Creeley, our producer, has posted that article on our Facebook page. So you can check that out. There may be some difficulties with the paywall, but I think Brent's got that sorted out. So anyway, that's just a bit of additional information.
You know, I think since you mentioned this, Ed, and I did see that former Soviet president or Russian president, say, "Oh yeah, we're going to give them nuclear weapons." Don't you think that's just kind of bluster and a bargaining chip?
Yeah, I got to say, I think Russia may have been a little bit embarrassed by what happened because they are allies with Iran. I know that Putin, this might have been with I don't know if it was a U.S. reporter that asked why they didn't help Iran with some of this with Israel, and Putin said something about, well, there's a lot of Russian speakers now in Israel, so we were staying out of it. I don't know if they were just a little embarrassed since they were allies with Iran and they didn't seem to be able to do anything to stop us. Not that they would want to engage U.S. forces directly, but I think you're right. I think it is a little bit of bluster to try to take.
They're just jealous. They're just jealous of the American military, and so he just wanted. This is my opinion. He just wanted to get a dig in.
Yeah.
And the dig is countries are lining up in the queue. He said to give Iran nuclear weapons, which that is not true. Right. But he just wanted to say he wanted to do something to scare Americans, Yeah. Like is Russia going to give Iran? And are they good about that? They happy about that? What if Iran gets mad at Russia and turns it around on them?
Right.
So I want to ask you another thing. By the way, Chris, welcome to the show.
No, yeah.
Chris Woodward.
I'm in the queue waiting on a question.
You're waiting on. Hey, that's good.
Thank you.
Chris Woodward, Ed Vitagliano, Tim Wildman, and joining us from the great state of North Carolina is our good friend Frank Turek. I want to ask you about turn it to the theology of the mullahs in Iran. So you have something called Ayatollah Khomeini, and Khomeini must be something like pharaohs or czars, or so it must be a word that they use to describe the supreme leader of the Islamic. I don't know what would you call it, movement over there? Is that what it is?
I think, Tim, that it's a slightly different spelling from.
It is. It's Khomeini.
Yeah, it's a different spelling.
It
sounds the same, but it's a different spelling. It's probably just his name. But as you know, and very few people talk about this in the media, but this is basic jihad that the Shias like to engage in. Of course, also the Wahhabi Sunnis do as well. This goes all the way back to Muhammad. I mean, if you look at 1,400 years of history, jihad is a physical struggle, not an internal, I'm trying to overcome sin kind of thing, or I'm trying to overcome some internal problem. Violence has been part of global Islam for 1,400 years. And this is not to say, obviously, that every Muslim agrees with this. Thankfully, only a minority agree with it, but that's a very vocal and violent minority. And it tends to, when it takes over a country, freedoms go away, as you see there in Iran, and all sorts of trouble occurs. They have been the biggest sponsor of global terrorism ever since 1979, when the Shah was kicked out and Ayatollah Khomeini took over. In fact, 19 years ago this month, I actually went to Tehran. We went on a Noah's Ark expedition. Long story, don't have to tell you all the details, but we went over there, and we happened to be over there during the 17th anniversary of Khomeini's death. And the streets of Tehran were just lined with all this propaganda, all these flags and pictures of Khomeini and everything. And on the side of buildings, one building had an American flag, and the stars were skulls, and the stripes were unfurling as bombs. And, down with America. We went to the old embassy, where in 1979 the Iranians stormed our embassy and took a number of hostages for 444 days, you remember, and when Reagan was sworn in, they let him go. And on the side of the embassy, there was this big mural. It was the Statue of Liberty, but the face of the Statue of Liberty was a skeleton. And underneath it said, "We will make America face a severe defeat." This was 19 years ago in Tehran, and I don't think much has changed since then.
Let me ask you this: what is the? Do you understand the apocalyptic? And I'm not talking about in the Christian view of that. I'm talking about the
like the 12th Imam and
yes.
all that.
You mentioned the Shia, which is a branch. There's the Sunni and the Shia. That's the two main branches of, or two main divisions, I guess, in Islam. The Iranians, Persians, they subscribe to the Shia. Shia denomination, for lack of a better word. So what is it that they believe, these mullahs, these imams, about the 12th Imam and the ushering in the end of the world, that kind of thing? What do you know about that?
I am not an expert in that regard.
Make it up, because we got 5 more minutes here.
It seems to me, although that is encouraging them toward violence, even if they didn't believe that, that's been going on for 1,400 years.
Gotcha.
I looked something up about this, if you guys want me to
chime in.
See what you get on it.
Chime in, Ed.
Because if you plug it into AI, we know it's true.
So Muhammad al-Mahdi, he was called the Mahdi, is considered the 12th and last Imam in 12er Shia Islam. He was born in 868 A.D. And he says to have been taken into a place of like spiritual hiddenness. And according to Shia tradition, the Mahdi will reappear at the end of time to establish peace and justice and the victory of Islam over all her enemies. And so my understanding is that the mullahs who run Iran believe that if they can trigger a worldwide war, but especially a war against Israel, that will bring the Mahdi out of hiding to give victory to Islam.
But isn't it interesting, Ed, that when you read the Quran, you know who's going to be the ultimate judge according to them? Jesus.
Really?
Oh yeah.
He's one. He's one of the prophets.
They believe that Jesus was virgin born. They believe Jesus was sinless, but they just don't believe he's God.
They don't believe he was crucified.
They don't believe he died and rose again either. They think he was taken straight to heaven because God would never kill a prophet. I guess they haven't read the whole Testament very much. That's in Surah 4, verse 157. And the problem for them is that they have a dilemma, and maybe we can pick this up after the break if I hear the music coming up. But
you do.
All right.
Do you hear the music coming up?
I hear the music coming up.
That means
we'll pick this up after the break.
That means shut up.
Yeah.
That's our shut up music.
That's right.
That is playing.
All right. We'll be back, Chris, Ed, and yours truly, Tim, and Dr. Frank.
We'll let Chris talk.
Yes, absolutely.
I'm in the queue.
Frank Turek with us. We're talking about several things here. With the mission that took place, the very highly successful U.S. military mission, which once again showed the capabilities of our unmatched military. And we'll be back momentarily. Stay with us.
It's my turn.
Here is your host for My Turn, Don Wildman.
As he said this, he spat on the ground and made clay of the spittle and anointed the man's eyes with the clay, saying to him, Go, wash in the pool of Siloam, which means sent. So he went and washed and came back seeing. The pool of Siloam is to be found in the southeastern section of Jerusalem. Today it is outside the walls around the old city. In the time of Christ it was inside the city walls. In fact, it was the water source for the city in time of attack. King Hezekiah, seeking a water source for use by the city under attack, cut a tunnel some 1,750 feet from the spring of Gihon to the pool. The tunnel was cut through solid rock in order to bring water inside the city walls. The tunnel was one of the most amazing engineering feats for water supply in the biblical period. Two groups of workmen began at opposite ends and worked toward the center. Using hand picks, the two groups dug in a zigzag pattern. The pattern resulted in a tunnel 1,750 feet in length to cover a distance of only 1,100 feet. In 1880, two boys were waiting in the tunnel when one accidentally discovered an inscription carved in the rock. The inscription was located about 19 feet from the Pool of Siloam. The inscription, one of the oldest Hebrew inscriptions known, contained only 6 lines. They were beautifully cut in classical Hebrew. The inscription told how the two groups managed to meet in the middle. The slab containing the inscription is today preserved in the Turkish Archaeological Museum at Istanbul. The pool's name, Siloam, meant sent. The name is symbolic of the water being sent through the tunnel into the city. The pool is an open-air basin and measures only about 20 by 30 feet today. It was to this Pool of Siloam that Jesus sent the man who had been blind since birth. You will recall that John makes no mention of the man requesting his sight, but after Jesus spat on the ground and made mud, which he applied to the man's eyes, Jesus told him to go wash in the pool. The man did as he was told. It was here in the clear, clean water that the man born blind first saw what he looked like. The religious authorities called the man in to question him about the event. After much questioning and debate, the authorities attempted to pin the label of sinner on Jesus. The healed man would not get involved in their theological arguments. He presented his case by speaking what he knew was fact. I do not know if he is a sinner or not. One thing I do know, I was blind, and now I see. You know, you can't argue with that. Just prior to the healing of the man, Jesus had said to him, I am the light of the world. After he could see physically, the man again came into contact with Jesus, and so for the second time Jesus healed him of his blindness. For on the second meeting, Jesus healed him of spiritual blindness. Many who visit the Pool of Siloam today recall that event recorded by John in his Gospel, and they also are able to say, once I was blind, but now I see.
This has been My Turn with Don Wildman, a production of the American Family Association.
Jesus said, "Let the little children come to me, and do not hinder them, for the kingdom of heaven belongs to such as these." Matthew 19:14.
American Family Radio. This is Today's Issues. Email your comments to comments@afr.net. Past broadcasts of Today's Issues are available for listening and viewing in the archive at afr.net. Now, back to more of Today's Issues.
Hey, welcome back, everybody, to Today's Issues on the American Family Radio Network. Thanks for listening to AFR. I'm Tim with Ed and Chris and Frank. Turek is joining us from North Carolina. We've been talking about, the big story for the last few days, and that is the United States bombing with the bunker busters, the nuclear facilities there in Iran, meant to they were there to build weapons, nuclear weapons to be used, and on Israel, on the U.S., on whoever. I guess Iran would want to do that too. But President Donald Trump said we're going to destroy those facilities, and he sent our bombers around the world to do so on a mission that was just spectacular. The more I read about it, and it's just, I don't think any other military in the world would be capable. They don't have the weapons, and wouldn't be capable of doing what our
it was
military
just a reminder to me. Sometimes we forget how powerful the U.S. military is and how professional they are,
and how it can reach around the world.
It's extraordinary. I mean, we got Frank on here. I don't want to take time away from him.
I wanted to ask you, Frank, to comment on this. A really volatile and scary part, and I do use that word I have faith in God. We all have faith in God here too. But it is, on a human level, it is scary what I'm about to mention. With most countries, most every country in the world, you can negotiate, you can deal with them, you can talk to them on a mutual understanding of reality, okay? That's the way I would put it. The Russians, the Chinese, whoever it may be. With the imams, the Khomeini, the mullahs in Iran, the religious fanatics, the Islamic religious fanatics that control the country, at least now, they don't they don't deal in the same world that normal political figures do. They're coming at it from a theological perspective, and so they don't have consideration necessarily for. This is why when they send weapons to bomb Israel, they don't care who it hits.
Right.
Israel and the United States are trying to avoid civilian casualties. Iran is trying to inflict them.
Yes, they want to trigger that final war.
Yeah, so they don't care about. So they hate Jews, they hate Christians, they hate Americans. So, what about that aspect of it, Frank? The religious fanaticism of the leaders and trying to deal with them.
Well, that's especially true when their own Quran says they can lie to the infidel. And who's the infidel? Anybody that's not their brand of Islam, even.
Right.
So, yeah, how do you negotiate with something like that? Now, of course, Donald Trump thinks he can negotiate anything with anyone. And if it was possible to negotiate and hold them to it, okay, that would be better than, bombing them. But they didn't even want to come to the table. They wouldn't even talk directly. They were trying to go through intermediaries. Mm-hmm. So he had really no choice at this point. This was the least worst choice. Let's just put it that way.
You mean for Trump?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. What else is he going to do? He's not going to allow them to get a nuclear weapon. That's off the table. Especially someone who has this worldview that they think they're going to bring the end times in, and they're also going to automatically go to heaven by committing jihad if they die in it. That's the way they can. In fact, in Islam, you can't. The only way you can be sure you're going to make it to paradise, as they call it, is to die in jihad. Otherwise, your good deeds have to outweigh your bad, and Allah. It's up to Allah whether that happens or not.
Well, Ayatollah needs to run outside and take one for the team then, doesn't he? If he really believes that?
Well, yeah, whether or not they really believe it is another question, but how do you negotiate with people that have a premise that you're the infidel, they can lie to you, they want you dead, they want global Islam. That's been going on for 1,400 years. This is nothing new.
All right, Chris, you got a question?
I do have a question. Frank, you travel around the country and you speak at many college campuses. They're obviously out for summer. But I'm curious, have you ever been confronted with a lot of questions about like Genesis 12:3 and whether or not Christians should side with Israel, things like that?
I have not. I've seen several people talking about it recently. And how about just for the sake of argument, we don't even look at the Bible in this situation. Is there any doubt as to who the good guys are and the bad guys are? Really?
Right. You're talking about
there's
in the
no
Middle
doubt.
East.
No.
Okay. Global terrorism has been sponsored by Iran since 1979. Iran is trying to Israel's trying to prevent them from nuking them. I mean,
yes,
they've said over and over again, we want to wipe Israel off the face of the earth. Now, here's an instance where maybe having the Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa Mosque right there in Jerusalem might be a good thing. If you nuke Israel, you're going to wipe that stuff out too.
Right.
By the way, Jordan's not going to be real happy. Neither's Lebanon.
Right.
Yeah, Egypt's not going to be happy about that.
Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
Syria.
I mean, isn't it interesting, too, when you look at the surrounding countries around Israel, I think, if I read correctly, that the surrounding countries have 177 times the land mass of Israel and 24 times the population, and they need a Palestinian state?
Right.
Yeah.
What? You know what the Palestinian state is? It's Jordan.
Mm-hmm.
And Jordan does not want these people because they're jihadists.
That is absolutely true.
And why can't they take Israel out? Why can a group of 10 million people, 20% of whom are Arabs, by the way, in Israel? Do you know there is a Muslim Arab on the Israeli Supreme Court? Arabs can vote in Israel. Right. They're citizens. Okay?
Yeah.
How can this small group of people hold off enemies all around them and dominate them? Why is that?
Because God's on their side.
And I hear people saying, well, we can't support Israel because, they're apostate, they're not believers. How many kings of Israel were believers?
Yeah, that doesn't change the fact that they're God's chosen people.
Right.
I mean,
all of the kings of Israel were bad. A few of the kings of Judah were good. The rest were bad. Did God ever say, he did judge them, but did he ever say, well, don't support them? Never said that. So,
Chris, did you have another question for?
No.
Okay. Brother Frank, we shall let you go now. Get back to what you were doing. I'm sure very important work there around the Turek household.
Well, let's keep praying for everybody. I've been praying for the people of Iran.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. I want to see them free
because everyone's made in the image of God. We don't want people to die unnecessarily.
No.
But the purpose of government is to protect innocent people from evil, and that's what Donald Trump is trying to do.
Yeah, amen. All right, thank you, Frank. Appreciate it, my friend.
All right, God bless you all.
All right, you too. Bye. Dr. Frank Turek. I said God is on their side. I didn't mean to sound flippant. I meant that. That's a long theological discussion that would take us days, which my knowledge would not hold up to. But I would just say this. It's inexplicable to me what Frank was saying. Outside of God and the story of the Bible and the Jews being God's chosen people, that Israel would even be surviving today, much less, as he said, carrying out missions like they did inside the Mossad, inside Iran.
Yes.
It's just miraculous. That's my belief. Go ahead.
Yeah, and listen, I know that there are some different theological perspectives amongst our listeners in terms of the end times and in terms of Israel. I understand that. And to your point, we're not trying to get into a big theological discussion. My particular view is that, yes, Israel is the people of Israel, the nation of Israel, are primarily non-Christian. Okay, it is true that in the first century, the nation of Israel was clearly judged by God for crucifying the Messiah. Matthew 23, other places, the prediction of the destruction of the temple by Jesus. Okay. Yes, there are promises that were given to Israel that seem to have incorporated God's New Testament movement in terms of the church, but it seems clear to me also that Romans 11 states emphatically, the Apostle Paul says, that God is still going to work in the lives of the Jewish people and the nation of Israel, so that when it was reconstituted as a nation in 1948, almost 2,000 years after it had been annihilated by the Romans, that's extraordinary. That it is an extraordinary occurrence when Paul in Romans 11 is talking about the nation of Israel, and then the nation of Israel historically ends, and for almost 2,000 years the church is going, well, how in the world does Romans 11 get fulfilled? There is no nation of Israel. And then in 1948, the nation is reconstituted in almost miraculous fashion. They stave off, without an army, they stave off an immediate attack by the nations around them in 1948. Listen, I don't know how you can deny the fact that God still has his hand on the Jewish people and the reconstituted nation of Israel. So I respect people who disagree with what I just laid out biblically, but that's my view. Yeah. And AFA does not have a theological view on the end times. There are people who have all kinds of views here inside the ministry. Our mission and our vision is cultural transformation. You want to find out about what your church teaches, you ask your pastor.
Yeah. Amen. You're listening to Today's Issues on American Family Radio. I'm Tim with Ed and Chris, and I would just say if you want to download our podcast, you can do that here or any of our shows here on American Family Radio. Just go to afr.net, click on podcast, and click on the banner with Today's Issues or any of the other shows, and you can listen on demand anytime you want to the program here.
Hey, by the way, let me just toss in one other thing. Folks, remember that there are a lot of Christians in the Middle East and in Iran.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they sometimes suffer under persecution, but these are people who love Jesus just as much as people in America do. And so be praying for them as well as a distinct group. Those are your brothers and sisters over there, always in very difficult
I want to ask
situations.
you one other question, then, Chris. I want to play some of these clips.
Okay.
We got some great clips, audio clips from over the weekend. And there may not be, we've talked about this issue before, but it relates to the spiritual nature of this particular conflict between Iran and Israel, okay? And I know I've studied history, you've studied history. Typically, wars are fought over land. Not always, but over the course of history, people have warred over land, right? That's what's going on in Ukraine with Ukraine and Russian war right now. It's over land, right? Control of land. So that's a primary reason for warfare in the course of human history. Now, with Iran and Israel, it's a weird conflict. And I say weird or strange or unusual, out of the ordinary, however you want to phrase it. Iran has no border with Israel. They're like 1,500 miles apart or something like that. There's no, so the Iranians are Persians. The Israelis, Jewish, and they're surrounded by Arabs. So the Hamas and Hezbollah, the two terrorist organizations, one in Gaza, one in Syria, that have been just harassing and targeting Israel for a long time, they have no kinship with the Iranians, in Persia. So why is Iran and their mullahs, and I mentioned spiritual, I think we're going to get to that just a minute, their mullahs, their religious leaders in Iran, why are they so obsessed with a tiny little country 1,500 miles away, which has nothing to offer them? I mean, you're not going to go into Israel and get a bunch of, natural resources. So what drives the obsession that the Iranians have had since 1979 with the destruction of the nation of Israel? Why don't they target Bolivia?
Yeah.
Why don't they target the Congo? I mean, what is it about Israel that isn't even on their border, near their border, that they just can't control, can't stand?
Now, I'm not an expert on this, but I have written some articles and done some research on this. My understanding is that theologically, Islam teaches this, that there are two realms on the face of the planet. There is Dar al-Islam, which means the house of Islam, and there is Dal al-Harb, Harb, which is the house of war. And the house of war are lands that are not subjugated to Islam. Dar al-Islam is the house of Islam. Those are countries that have been subjugated to Islam. And the belief theologically is that once a land has been subjected to Islam, it belongs to Islam forever. And so when Israel was granted land in the Muslim theological mind in the house of Islam, that was an abomination. And the Jews cannot control that land because it belongs to Islam and does forever. So that's why you have those who believe in real Islam, okay, what we call the radicals. they may very well just be the ones who actually believe Islam, the Muslim Brotherhood and the Iranian Shia Muslims.
The Bin Laden types.
The Bin Laden types. They have to obliterate the Jews and end the Nation of Islam, or Allah will be angry with them.
Yeah.
And this, in part, is why this is why no one wants, Frank Turek just said, nobody wants these radicals in Jordan or Saudi Arabia, because they believe Saudi Arabia and Jordan are compromised, because they're living the good life and they won't eliminate Israel and they won't go to war with the West, which is their Islamic responsibility. And that's why they don't want. That's why Egypt kicked the Muslim Brotherhood out of Egypt, and they, moved over to Gaza. So the reason why Iran hates Israel and hates America for protecting Israel is because we stand behind Israel and help prevent the Muslims from taking that land over again.
I'm going to go with demonic as the answer. It's a demonic power feeding off the hatred that this people group has for another one. I mean, we get the God of the Bible from the Jews. Jesus himself said salvation is from the Jews. They hate Israel. They hate America because they are demonic.
That's why we're called the great Satan and Israel's the little Satan.
That is exactly why.
But what you just described at least would explain in some way the way these people think. By these people, I mean the Iranian religious leaders like Khomeini. They think that the Jews, what they call the Zionists, have land that belongs to the Muslims, even though it's a Shia Sunni division too. They can't stand each other. A lot of them talking about that division of Islam, but still their common enemy are the Jews and Israel. And you know what? Israel has put up with a lot over the years. And the Hezbollah, the Hamas, they've been getting their financial support from Iran. And so if you knew that somebody was funding your terrorist organizations that were constantly attacking your country, it's kind of surprising to me that Israel's not attacked earlier against Iran. But, all right, you got some clips to play for us?
Well, we do.
Yeah.
Related to this, because one of the things people are panicking about is, what is this going to do to my gas prices? That's a question many Americans are asking today. I've already seen Fox cover this.
Are they panicking about it?
Well, there are some people that are, I think, feeding panic.
Right.
There are some news outlets that just want to do a segment on it, but when you spend hours and you keep going back to it, I think people start to panic.
Right.
And then they go to the gas station, and then they're buying out the gas and whatever else. Certainly, diesel customers should be very concerned about this. But, related to this, over the weekend, it was announced Iran wanted the Strait of Hormuz to be shut down, therefore impacting oil transportation. Some people, though, that are not scared about it include Ben Shapiro, who did make these comments over the weekend. Clip 7.
Approximately 20 million barrels of oil per day, about 20% of global consumption, pass through the Strait of Hormuz. Of the oil that transits Hormuz, 70 to 82% of all of it is destined for Asian markets. China is the single largest recipient. China, along with India, Japan, and South Korea, accounted for 67% of all crude oil and condensate flows through the strait in 2022 and the first half of 2023. So China bleeds first. Analysts say if this is what happens, then actually the people hit hardest are, wait for it, the Chinese. So that seems like a really stupid strategic move. How about the United States? Well, the United States imports about 0.7 million barrels of oil per day of crude oil and condensate from Persian Gulf countries through the Strait of Hormuz as of 2022. That accounts for 3% of total U.S. petroleum liquids consumption. Not 70 to 82%, 3%. So, again, could that be a long-term problem in the same way that it's kind of a problem that the Houthis have shut down the Red Sea? Sure, that could be a problem. Also, it could give Israel an excuse to just sink the Iranian Navy.
I will tell you this. If you are concerned about gas prices today, you should be less concerned today with Donald Trump in charge of oil and gas policy than, God forbid, Kamala Harris. Because Kamala's answer to this would have been more solar panels and windmills and all these other novelties that aren't going to
this was one of the reasons that President Trump won the election is that I think what factored in was leadership, especially on the world stage. And President Trump had 4 years of experience in that. We got to see what he did.
Yeah, I mean, gas was dirt cheap.
Yeah, well, but Americans, I think, trusted President Trump. They obviously more than Vice President Harris to handle big situations like we're in right now. But do you have the clip where President Trump is talking about loving God?
Yes, we do.
What are we? So this was also a part of the speech Saturday night?
This is how he ended it after he talked about what we had done, and it was very successful. And then he mentioned this, clip 15.
And I want to just thank everybody, and in particular, God. I want to just say we love you, God, and we love our great military. Protect them. God bless the Middle East. God bless Israel, and God bless America. Thank you very much. Thank you.
It was a very brief speech, but that was kind of a mic drop moment there at the very end.
It was a brief speech, and then he referred to the press conference the next day, which would have been yesterday, by Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth and the General Raising Cane.
We're all going to hear. Remember, it was Storm and Norman in the first Gulf War.
What do you think about Trump saying "We love you, God"? There,
I've never heard any president say something that seemed so personal. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, I've heard lots of presidents say, we thank God.
God bless America.
God bless America. This sounded like something right from his heart.
I agree. I've never heard a president do that. I don't think President Trump would ever tear up.
Right.
Okay, but because he's too much of an alpha male.
Yes. Right.
Well, I don't know if he's too much of an alpha male. That's not for me to judge, I guess. He's an alpha male.
Yeah.
Okay. But
I mean, he
sounded like he was about to tear up right there almost.
Yeah. It sounded genuine.
Yes, that's what I mean.
And I like Tim saying, I can't read his heart, but it sounded genuine. And we can't forget, he credits God for saving his life.
Yes.
On that assassination attempt. Now, I don't know who he thinks God is. I've heard some people say he is a Christian. I can't, from this distance, there's no way I can tell. But if he's not already a Christian, God is working in his life. That sounded like a genuine, we love you, God.
Yeah, I mean, it just sounded like he was almost going to choke up.
Yeah.
That's what I don't think that was in the speech at the end.
Yeah.
I think that was straight from his heart.
Yeah.
What I'm saying. I don't know that. I'm just guessing by the way he delivered it, because he had already kind of finished his official remarks.
Yeah.
And as President Trump is prone to do, he's going to inject his own.
Yes, right.
His own. He got speechwriters, and then he's got his own commentary.
Yes.
All right, and they're often mingled. All right, we're going to take a short time out right here. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
We'll be back with Steve Paisley Jordahl in just a few minutes.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio.
Sometimes being an insider means you understand the joke that only certain ones really know. Other times, it gets you into exclusive places. As an AFA insider, you'll get information about issues and policies that can dramatically impact our families and our Christian rights. And you won't have to travel to D.C. or even dress up to get it. Find out more and sign up at afa.net/activism.
This is American Family Radio, a listener-supported ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh. President Trump is expected to sit down with his national security team this afternoon to discuss the next steps on Iran following the strikes against 3 nuclear sites over the weekend. Alexandria Hoff has more from the White House.
White House officials, the message coming from them this morning is that they believe with high levels of confidence that where these bombs were dropped is where Iran's enriched uranium was stored. President Trump's going to be meeting with his national security team to discuss what kind of impact Operation Midnight Hammer had. The president had warned Saturday night it's now up to Iran to decide if they want peace or if they want tragedy by retaliation. Now, questions were raised this morning about President Trump's intentions when he wrote this. It is not politically correct to use the term regime change, but if the current Iranian regime is unable to make Iran great again, why wouldn't there be a regime change? So the administration has maintained it's not at war with Iran, but its nuclear program, and that toppling Iran's supreme leader is not the goal.
Some Republicans have joined Democrats in criticizing President Trump's strike on Iran, claiming that Congress should have been consulted first. Here's Kentucky's Thomas Massey.
We haven't been briefed. They should have called us all back. And frankly, we should have debated this war powers resolution that Ro Khanna and I offered instead of staying on vacation and doing fundraisers and saying, oh, well, the president's got this under control. We're going to cede our constitutional authority.
White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt responded.
First of all, we did make bipartisan calls. Thomas Massey and the Democrats, he should be a Democrat because he's more aligned with them than with the Republican Party. We're given notice. The White House made calls to congressional leadership. They were bipartisan calls. In fact, Hakeem Jeffries couldn't be reached. We tried him before the strike, and he didn't pick up the phone, but he was briefed after, as well as Chuck Schumer was briefed prior to the strike. So this notion that CNN ran with at the White House did not give a heads up to Democrats is just completely false. In fact, both Senator Schumer's office and CNN had to retract that story last night because it was a blatant lie.
A church security guard in Michigan shot and killed a man who opened fire at a church on Sunday. Garrett Tenney has more.
These church members who were attending a children's service Sunday morning when they heard gunshots right outside the front doors. The church's live stream captured the panic inside as folks heard those shots fired. According to police, the shooter was driving around the parking lot erratically before parking and getting out in body armor with an AR-15 style rifle, more than a dozen fully loaded magazines, and a semi-automatic handgun. When he started shooting at the church, a member who was pulling into the parking lot hit the gunman with his truck before a brief gunfight broke out with church security, who killed the shooter. He has been identified as a 31-year-old man from a few towns over. His mom was a member of the church.
A conservative military watchdog is praising a decision by an appellate court to uphold President Trump's ability to nationalize California National Guard troops.
Another court victory for President Trump. An appeals court ruled that the president can keep control of National Guard troops he deployed to Los Angeles following protests over immigration raids. The decision halts a ruling from a lower court judge who claimed Trump acted illegally when he activated the soldiers over opposition from California Governor Gavin Newsom. In its decision, a three-judge panel on the 9th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals unanimously concluded it was likely Trump lawfully exercised his authority in federalizing control of the Guard. Elaine Donnelly is president of the Center for Military Readiness.
That was a very logical decision. You talk about dictators and tin pot dictators. Look at Gavin Newsom and look at his whole political party imposing agendas on Americans that Americans never supported, never voted for through Congress. Things like boys and women's locker rooms and things like that, Department of Education. That's dictatorship.
And Donnelly says Democrats are once again projecting.
Typical Democrat Party way, they always accuse Republicans of what they themselves are doing. But we cannot have 50 governors deciding whether or not the National Guard should be used to protect the federal employees and buildings that belong to the United States of America. We can't have that. And the court ruled in the right way. Gavin Newsom is the one who's overstepping his authority here.
I'm Chad Groening.
More news online at afn.net and on the AFN mobile app. I'm Rusty P.
AFA Action takes attacks on the family seriously. The enemies of the family constantly employ new tactics to try to sneak past our radar. They know if we stand together, their evil plans will fail. Your gift to AFA Action allows us to stay vigilant against their onslaught. And if you give this month, you'll receive access to the Cultural Institute video When Your Faith is Illegal by Frank Harbor on AFA Stream as our thanks. You can make your gift today at afaaction.net.
Today's Issues continues on AFR with your host, Tim Wildman, president of the American Family Association.
Hey, welcome back, everybody, to today's issues on the American Family Radio Network. Tim Wildman here with Ed Battagliano and Steve Paisley. Jordahl will be with us. Steve's not in the studio at this moment, but any second or minute he will be in with us. He went to get a audio clip that we need to play during this half hour. Hey, you know these bombs that we dropped on Iran?
Yeah.
From these B-52s?
B-2s, the B-2.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
B-52s. They were.
We still have. I think we may still have
banned.
B-52s, but they were.
I think they separated drugs and alcohol and
the B-52.
Typical,
It'll do it every
typical
time.
rock band stuff. Anyway, no, the B-2s, I should say. They went over from Missouri to Iran and dropped these bunker busting. Do you call them missiles? What do you call them?
No, they're bombs.
Okay, bombs. Down the air vent shaft over there. I'm saying this is how precise they are. I think these smart weapons can hit a target the size. I think Vice President Vance said something about the size of a cell phone or something. I don't know. You know what I'm saying? That's just how remarkable these smart bombs are that we use here.
Yeah, it's different from World War II, where there was skill involved, certainly with the scope, but these are
carpet
guided.
bombing.
Yeah,
that was carpet bombing.
Yeah,
we did a lot of that back in those days.
Even in
hey, Steve Paisley, Jordahl.
Good morning, everybody. Sorry I'm late.
Why are you late?
Well, I was grabbing some sound, some things we can listen to here about.
While you catch your breath, you had mentioned in the previous segment, I did look it up. The distance between Israel and Iran is about 1,100 miles.
Right.
So that's, to your point, that they're not next door.
Right.
That's like
now on the global scene, that's close, but still, it's not like they're neighboring countries that have a tradition of war against each other.
Right.
So, all right, Steve, go ahead.
All right. So, I spent the weekend wondering what the world we could talk about today. I was worried about it. One of the things that happened in the wake of the bombing of Iran by the U.S. were several Democrats, including Ocasio-Cortez, AOC, calling for Donald Trump's impeachment.
Yeah.
Saying that he was acting against the Constitution and that these kind of things needed to come from Congress. I had a brief conversation with my friend Jeff Crank, who is a Republican congressman from Colorado, about his thoughts on that whole thing, and I want you to have a listen to what he had to say. Cut 16.
Democrats always claim to support Israel, but then when it comes right down to it, do they? It's another week. And, of course, that means it's another call for impeachment from Democrats of President Trump. These are the same Democrats, by the way, that didn't care when Bill Clinton launched cruise missiles without any authorization from Congress. Also, when Barack Obama was sending drones in to attack and kill people. Our founding fathers made it very vague, right? They gave the president the power of being commander-in-chief, but they also gave Congress the power to declare war. Congress said, you can act according to your wishes as commander-in-chief for 60 days. And the president did that. He's on day 3 now of that.
You know, it's interesting that that at least conceptually, as this congressman pointed out, Congressman Crank, you said, okay, that the Constitution does give the president as the commander-in-chief. He is in charge of the military forces. Congress has to give a declaration of war because they have the purse strings. They would fund a war. But at the time the Constitution was written, we did not have a standing army like we do now, Navy, Air Force. It's already been paid for. So back when the founders wrote the Constitution, the Congress would have to issue a declaration of war and then authorize the funding to raise an army to go and fight. We already have a military that is paid for and trained, And so I think it makes sense, the kind of the compromise between Congress and the executive branch that we have. You limit what the president can do initially. You give him, you take the reins off. That military that's already paid for, you can use it since you're the commander in chief. But if you want to go long term, you've got to get Congress involved. It seems to me that the people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, they are just they just have that flu virus.
That TDS.
TDS.
Trump
they hate everything he does.
Everything. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. If
is there an mRNA vaccine for that? Because
well, you know what? It's interesting to me though. See, I'm not hearing a whole lot of pushback or criticism of President Trump from the Democrats right now.
Several of them are in favor. We listened to John Fetterman this morning, who full-on applause of it. Most of them are just being silent, not saying a whole lot of anything. And then there are the far left, not too many, but a couple that are speaking
like
out.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, she's going to be against anything President Trump does.
Jasmine Crockett, same.
Yeah, the squad.
Yeah.
But I'm just not hearing a lot of criticism yet. I mean, some. But even I saw what's the MSNBC host, Scarborough?
Joe Scarborough.
Joe Scarborough said, basically any president would have done the same thing.
Yeah, although they didn't.
Yeah, I don't know. But I don't know if they were faced with this moment.
Yeah.
Well, it seems from everything we've heard is that Iran was so close to finalizing the development of nuclear weapons.
Israel did all the dirty work.
Yeah.
To get everything prepped for what the U.S. did, and then Benjamin Netanyahu and the Israelis just said, "Hey, we can't finish them off. You can.
Yeah.
Can you help us? And can you help the world?
Yeah.
Basically, so and stay clear of a Iranian nuclear bomb."
Previous presidents could still. Now the Biden administration did nothing to slow Iran down.
He didn't know what was going on at the time.
But previous presidents had tried to slow down Iran, let's have negotiations and all that. But when you get right up to it, the moment when they were about to finalize it, Trump did. I agree with Scarborough. That's rare. But Joe Scarborough said any president would have probably done the same thing. You could not let that group of apocalyptic nutcases get nuclear weapons. Because we had heard last week that they might be close enough to produce enough material for 9 atomic bombs.
Right.
Or missiles.
All right, Steve.
An interesting thing that happened around the Pentagon while this was going on. Maybe a little security leak that they might want to start putting to a close. Here's a social media site called the Pentagon Pizza Report. And they take a look at the activity of pizza parlors and restaurants around the Pentagon. And if it comes to, as in this case, a Friday night at 9 o'clock, and all of a sudden there's a sudden surge in pizza orders around the Pentagon, well, they have a feeling something might be up. And an hour before they launched this attack, they reported that Papa John's Pizza had a huge spike about 7 p.m. on Friday, had a huge spike in orders. And they also noted that there's a Freddy's Beach Bar restaurant and bar near the Pentagon was running abnormally low activities. So nobody was going out, everybody was ordering in. And they say that that's a tip-off. That might be a tip-off.
I thought that was kind of fascinating that there are people who watch this kind of thing, and that this is a real thing. People are paying attention. My understanding is that at that time on a Friday night, there's usually no wait if you order a pizza. But because of the extraordinarily high activity, there was a long wait, and their guess is that everyone is ordering in because it's going to be a long night. The only way to stop that is you just tell everyone who's coming in, bring your own lunch. Bring a couple of sandwiches because we don't want to. I'm just kidding.
The Pentagon is the largest office building in the entire world.
I did not know that.
They have to. Well, at one point it was. I think it still is. They have to have at least 10 cafeterias. certainly snack machines, if
Yes.
nothing else.
What? I'm just curious. What was the number one pizza choice?
You know what? I don't know that they went on that. It was some. I think pizza. Around the Pentagon, there was a Papa John's pizza called Bomberon. The Bomberon pizza.
Bomberon.
I thought you were doing the Beach Boys.
Yeah,
song
there you go.
For just a minute.
Oh man.
By
the way, you sent something around, Tim, over the weekend. I don't know if I could pull it up, but it was someone had created a meme that said, talking about pronouns, and that Iran's nuclear facilities are now going by the pronouns was and were. That was pretty clever. Several friends on Facebook posted that and sent it around, and it was all over the place over the weekend.
That is pretty funny. All right. Hey, there's a story that may have been leading the news had we not had this happen.
What happened?
The bombing.
What bombing?
There was a bombing over the weekend in Iran.
Oh, yeah, that.
Yeah. If not for that, this might have been the lead story. There was a church shooting in Michigan at the Cross Point Community Church in Wayne, Michigan, a suburb of Detroit. An erratic driver came into the parking lot, parked his car, got out with a long gun and a pistol, and started walking toward the sanctuary, which, by the way, was full of kids celebrating the last day, I think, of their vacation Bible school.
Right.
And started firing bullets into the building. Remarkably, a guy that was coming into church that night, he was driving his pickup truck, saw this, lightning speed thinking. I just got off the phone with Ryan Dobson, Dr. Dobson's son, but who is a church security expert in his spare time. The guy who came in his pickup, gunned it, and rammed this guy down. And then a couple security people at the church came and shot him, killed him. He got into a gunfight with them, wounded a couple of them, non-life-threatening. Quick thinking, both outside the venue and inside. There was a woman on the stage who calmly told all the kids to get up and exit to the left, which was away from the danger. Ryan said if that had gone differently and he had gotten into the building, she would have been credited with saving untold amounts of lives.
Yeah.
Good, quick thinking. Ryan's advice to everybody is whenever you go into not only a church, but any public space, just take an inventory where the exits are.
Yeah.
What was the motivation for the person who attacked them?
They don't know, or they haven't released it if they do know.
Well, I'm not trying to make everyone, nervous. And I have no idea what the motivation was in this case in Wayne, in the city of Wayne in Michigan. But there are concerns that in light of the attack over the weekend, the bombings in Iran, that there may be sleeper cells in this country that may be activated. I don't know. I don't know how many are here because of 4 years of President Biden. Probably nobody does. Or how successful they might be, or if anything would be. But that was the first thing I thought when I heard of this over the weekend. Is I thought, well, is this a lone wolf that is taking revenge? Maybe we'll find out. It is increasingly typical that in these kinds of cases, local law enforcement will sometimes not release manifestos or information. I don't know if they're trying to prevent repercussions.
Do you believe
group?
You think that majority of churches now have security during the church hours, vacation Bible school, and that kind of thing?
If you don't, I'm not sure how wise it is. Now, I mean, we have. I'm not going to mention the name of the church, but the church that you and I go to, they have full-on security teams. We do here at AFA. We do regular training, and we have all kinds of security measures. If you don't do that, I don't know.
But who would ever think Vacation Bible School?
I know.
Who would ever think somebody would come in for Vacation Bible School and try to kill people?
And kill children.
Yeah.
I don't even know if the person knew that VBS was going on, but good grief. There is whatever the percentage is of people in this country that have lost their minds, they're possessed by the devil, however you want to describe it. But you've got to take precautions if your state allows it. And if it doesn't, leave the state. Get out of those states.
Yeah, Wayne Police Department, according to Fox News, the Wayne Police Department has named the now deceased shooter as Brian Anthony Browning, 31 years old, lived in Romulus, Michigan, in a neighboring town. Police have not commented on a potential motive, but they said Browning's mother is a member at the church and that he had attended the church 2 or 3 times over the last year.
You know, sometimes these things, there have been times when shootings have happened, and it's a personal vendetta. But now this guy opened up from outside the church, shooting blindly into the church.
Right.
So sometimes they'll show up at a service and someone's doing something wrong with someone else's wife, and then that unfolds. There's all sorts of different scenarios.
But if somebody had not been at the church with a gun to be this, he was there for security purposes, right? This person, or did he just happen to be there and he's carrying?
No, the 2 people that engaged him were part of their security team.
Okay, so they had a security team.
Yeah.
For the Vacation Bible School graduation or whatever it was.
Yeah,
not
VBS.
VBS.
This all started. I should look up the date. In Colorado Springs, there's a church. They're a large church. That's the name has just escaped me, but it had this one of the first church shootings that I remember. I was working at Focus at the time, which is a block away from this church. And the guy came into the parking lot, started shooting. He unfortunately killed 2 sisters who were leaving church, getting into their car. An off-duty police officer at the church engaged the guy when he got in the building and killed him. But I
remember that.
The next day, the next Sunday, every church in Colorado Springs, and I think shortly thereafter, every church in the country had a plan, if not a security. We had armed police at our church, very visible the next Sunday and for the next month, and they still are. There's still an armed, my old church back in Colorado Springs, there's still an armed police officer in the lobby at all times, anytime the church is open.
Well, listen, that was, remember, Focus on the Family?
Yep. Yeah.
That was an attempt of an individual to go and kill everyone there.
Yeah,
they had a security guard. He did get shot, I think, but he ended the threat.
That was at Family Research Council.
Family Research, yeah, FRC.
FRC. There actually was a guy in Focus that came in and held the lobby hostage.
Yeah,
and
held the lobby hostage.
Well, the secretaries, the people who were the gate at the lobby, and of course, right off the lobby at Focus, there's like a bunch of departments that have offices there. But he came in, and this was years before I even got there. He got off one shot, and there's a bullet hole in the wall. They kept, and a plaque under the bullet hole saying, on this date, God saved us from this. So, yeah, it does happen. Hey, I want to, there's other stuff, political stuff we can get to, but I really am anxious to talk about this. We are, according to Elon Musk, we are about a year away or less from curing blindness. Yes, you heard me right. Cut 14.
In the next 6 to 12 months, we'll be doing our first implants for vision, where even if somebody's completely blind, we can write directly to the visual cortex, and we've had that working in monkeys. Actually, I think one of our monkeys now has had the visual implant for 3 years, and at first it'll be fairly low resolution, but long term, you would have very high resolution and be able to see in multispectral wavelengths. So you could see an infrared, ultraviolet, radar. It's like a superpower situation.
Isn't that something?
I just know one thing. If you're in Elon Musk graduating class, you got no shot at valedictorian.
No kidding.
No shot at valedictorian.
Yeah, no kidding.
You're going to be number 2.
I mean, this guy, I don't know what history's going to write about him, but he's like some kind of like a Edison or Einstein kind of person. because he excels in almost everything he does. You know, whether it's launching
having children.
Spacecraft. Oh, you had to go there. Yeah, that's a different parallel. We may have to parallel him with some well-known athletes. But I mean, just about everything. Tesla. I mean, he wants to put people on Mars.
The Boring Company.
The Boring Company,
which is not lack of interest. It's tunnels that this guy drills under cities.
Yes, and can do it far quicker and far cheaper than anybody else. But this here now, I do have some concerns with Elon Musk and some of his visions and goals. He doesn't appear to know God, or I don't even know what his beliefs are. But he's a big fan of what's called transhumanism. That's got nothing to do with transgender ideology. It has to do with the joining of human beings biologically with machinery or
the Borg.
Yes, like the Borg on Star Trek, where the human body would be combined when you're missing an arm or you're missing, a heart or whatever, that there can be
like
technical.
The lion.
Huh?
Like the lion.
Yes, exactly, on the Wizard of Oz. Mm-hmm. If you don't have a heart.
Missing a heart.
Yes. No, that was Courage. Yeah, and it was
No, it was a Tin Man.
It was
the Tin Man.
He only had a heart.
Yeah, I just wanted to give people an analogy they could understand.
Yes. Thank you for that. So I have a hard time understanding, the long-term ethical implications, but to try to give sight to the blind, it's extraordinary.
I was going to say the ethical problems would be a lot less if you were blind.
Yes, no, I'm talking about in terms of combining humans biologically with machines and computers and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
I'm sure I'm not saying it in the right scientific way, but that's extraordinary. I mean, 6 months to a year.
Yeah,
he said
6 months to a year. Hey, I got some breaking news.
Break it.
Yep. According to the Babylon Bee, President Obama is making a statement. He's distraught as Trump has bombed the cool nuke factory that he paid for.
Babylon Bee. Well, listen, President Obama will live in infamy for a number of reasons, but sending pallets of unmarked bills in the nighttime on a plane,
hoping to not be discovered, I guess.
Yes.
Just what? Give cash.
Yeah.
What are you doing giving cash to Iran?
Yeah. And he claimed
like $1 billion. I don't know how much. It was like
$2 or $3 billion, I think.
Yeah, and it was, which is more than twice what I have in the bank. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
More than twice.
Yeah.
Yeah. And of course, President Obama tried to defend what he did by saying, well, this was only money that belonged to Iran when their assets were frozen after the Iranian Revolution in 1979, which is complete bunk because there were outstanding demands that Iran pay money. It was it seemed completely unethical what President Obama did.
Or complete bunker busters. Which one did you say?
Complete bunk.
Oh, bunk.
But
okay.
it complete.
Thank you,
bunk
Steve.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Ed.
Yeah.
Your contribution
I was still
to
talking,
this here show. I know you were, but we're about out of time. You hear the music?
I do.
Trying to help you.
It was Frank Turek said it's shut up music.
All right. Thank you for joining us, ladies and gentlemen. And on a serious note, please do pray for President Trump and his team today as they make critical decisions about the situation at hand that we've talked about for the last hour and a half. We'll see you tomorrow, everybody. Take care.